Welcome back to another Crusty Cravings video. I'm Hannah and I'm a sourdough microbaker in Fort Myers, Florida. I've been doing this for about a year and a half, but I just started doing this full-time in February when I got laid off from my corporate job. It's been a while since I've done a week in the life vlog, and a lot has changed since I started doing this full-time. So today I'm going to walk you through my prep schedule. Prep starts on Wednesday. I do my dough day on Thursdays. Pickups are on Fridays, and I've started to add pop-ups and events on Saturdays. So I'm doing both a pickup and a pop-up this week, so I'm very busy, and I'm going to walk you through what that prep looks like and how I manage it all. First things first, I am browning some butter for my brown butter chocolate chip cookies. This is one of my best sellers on my menu. I'm going to release a lengthy guide whenever I hit 50,000 followers on Instagram that walks you through all of the tools I use for those cookies, the recipe, my process, my pricing, my packaging, and tips, of course, on how to really perfect and nail this recipe. It's truly one of my best sellers. I sell about 4 to 6 dozen a week, and I'm offering so many other things, so the fact that people are wanting to buy cookies on top of my bread and other baked goods is just really cool to me. I've had these on my menu since the very beginning. Of course, I've perfected them over the last year and a half to where now I think I have them just right. But with anything, you always get better at what you do, and they continue to improve every week. On Wednesdays, I prep all of my brown butter chocolate chip cookies, and I roll all of them by hand and put them in the fridge for up to 3 days. And then if I don't sell all of them, I end up freezing them, and they bake just as good from frozen, if not better sometimes. I also prep all of my scones, and I wrap them in saran wrap and put them in the freezer. Those will be baked on Friday night for my Saturday market, and I bake them Friday morning for Friday pickups. And those are also great in the freezer for up to 2 weeks. They bake better from frozen. I think they hold their shape more. And I'm also prepping granola today, which is the first time I've ever offered granola on my menu. But I tried maple pecan sourdough granola this past week, and it is so good. I'm just eating it straight from the bag these days. The perks of having dry goods like these is they're good for about 3 weeks. So I could prep them about a week in advance and still be selling them for 2 weeks. But because they're so dry, they're going to stay pretty good for a long time. So good. Like, I literally am just eating it straight out of the bag. This is what my brown butter looks like after I'm done. And then I just have to let it cool until it starts to solidify, and then I add it into my batter for my cookies. Please stop staring at me when I'm recording. It makes me nervous. Don't look at me. Next thing I'm prepping is my sourdough brown butter maple pecan granola. Oh my gosh, that's a mouthful. It is not my recipe. It is the Sourdough Farm Stand recipe, and it's a free download. So head to her Instagram, look at her stand store, and download it because you're going to want to try this recipe. It is so good. But it takes about an hour and 15 minutes to bake, and then you want to let it cool for about 6 hours before you package it. You basically want the granola to completely harden and cool before you break it up and package it. So I'm starting it now so I can start to package it maybe later tonight. Just takes a lot of maple syrup. Because I have a Pico Plus bread oven, I can use a full-size baking sheet to spread out my granola and bake it in my bread oven for about an hour. It only took about an hour last time. So I'll spread it like as best I can, the spatula, and then you press it down with your hands. Okay, so I put my granola in there. It's gonna be in there for about an hour. I'm gonna rotate it halfway through and that will be done. Granola has been in there for a little under an hour and it is ready to get out now. Smells so good. My least favorite part about making my apple crumble scones is peeling them. I feel like there has to be an easier way, but here we are. I do it all by hand. Suppose you could already buy peeled apples, but they do not taste the same. While I'm finishing cutting my apples, I thought I would yap for a second. The thing about a 9-to-5 is that you clock in, you clock out. You have your set hours for the day and you can log off. Of course, if you work in a non-toxic environment, that's the case. And weekends, typically, you get off and you can decompress and go on trips and spend time with your family. And if you're lucky, you have PTO and you can use that throughout the year to go on trips. The thing about entrepreneurship and what I found is that although it sounds whimsical, it's just not the reality. With entrepreneurship, you really do work 24/7 and it is extremely hard to set boundaries. Especially if your family is counting on the money that you're making from your business to pay your bills. I took a significant pay cut to be a microbakery owner and I am still growing my business. Yes, social media can sometimes help offset some of the slower months, but even content is a full-time job. So what I'm finding is that although I do love baking, it is causing me a lot of stress to run this full time and expect my income to be at a certain amount to cover bills. I still have faith that it will work out, but part of me wants to go back into the corporate world solely because the stress is so much higher with entrepreneurship. For me, at least. Yes, I love what I do, but I also loved what I did in the corporate world. I just worked for somebody and worked to make somebody else rich. And sometimes that's not a bad thing. So if you're seriously considering starting a microbakery, I would think long and hard and really weigh the pros and the cons. And I would recommend doing what I did, which was run my microbakery on top of my full-time job for a year, just to see how sustainable being a baker actually is. And the truth is, it really does suck some months. You are working so many hours on your feet, doing very labor-intensive work, and sometimes with little reward. You may have markets that get rained out. It is pouring rain right now. That happens a lot in Florida. You may have very, very slow markets and you've prepped all this product and now nobody's buying it. And then I have to do flash sales where I discount all of my products and maybe just recover some of what I spent on ingredients and I just break even, which really, really, really sucks. And then there's some months where it's like insane and you're like, oh, why haven't I been doing this for longer? Like, I love it. It comes down to like what you want out of life, what you're doing this for. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you're just wanting to get into it and make a little bit of extra income, any income is income at that point. But for somebody like me who's coming from the corporate world and almost like restarting, like building from scratch, it is a really hard pill to swallow when you cut your income in half. So just my 2 cents. My apples are now ready to add in. I just have to let them cool for a little bit before I actually start making those scones. And then I make my apple crumble topping next. This is how the crumble starts. It's just butter, brown sugar, regular sugar, a tiny bit of salt, doesn't need much, and flour. On hand, just okay. Now we just set this to the side, let it cool off. It'll start to get more crumbly, and then this is what I use on the top of my scones. All right, next we are starting my cheddar and chive scones. I have my recipe for download on my stand store. My biggest hack for making scones in bulk, especially with butter, is to freeze your butter so that it's nice and cold, and then use a food processor or a blender to blend it with some of the dry ingredients instead of having to hand grate it. That way none of it sticks to the container and you don't lose any of it in that process of grating, because what I notice is the butter notoriously warms up and sticks to the sides of the grater and you can't get it all off. So it's kind of like chunky that way, but it all comes out. This is my best hack for shaping scones. It makes that triangle shape so easy. Just line an 8-inch cake pan with saran wrap. And after making my bulk dough for scones, I just weigh it out on that particular pan. My scone dough is about 1,000 grams as a base. And then I have a scone topping that goes on it for this one. This is my apple crumble scone recipe, and I have it on my stand store. So I level out that scone dough. Level it out with my hands, and sometimes it can get a little sticky, especially with this apple one. So I will put some flour on my hands to really level it without it sticking. Pull that out, but I don't completely press it in because I want it to be nice and crumbly on the top. So I just gently press it into the top with my fingers. And then after I do so, I take a pie cutter and just mark where I'm going to be cutting this out. Honestly, scones are so yummy, but they take so much effort and extra work that I kind of wish I hadn't become the scone lady. And fun fact, I had never had a scone before I started making them, so I didn't know what to compare them to. But now I hate the thought of having like super dry scones. My scones are more of like a biscuit-like texture, super flaky, but also soft, and then a little bit crunchy on the outside. And after doing this, I freeze this whole disc, and I will be baking these from frozen. I'm on the home stretch of my prep. I'm doing my brown butter chocolate chip cookies last. I'm doing a triple batch, and the last thing I have to do tonight is prep my starter and mill my flour. and that will complete day 1 of prep. Tomorrow is dough day. All right, so let's make a triple batch of brown butter chocolate chip cookies. I'm going to be releasing my guide for this fairly soon as I hit 50,000 followers on Instagram. This is what my cookie dough looks like when it is fully ready to start scooping into balls. I put my cookie dough in the fridge to chill for a little bit before I scoop it. It just makes it easier to handle, easier to roll that way. It's not as sticky. But the next step in my process and the final step of this prep day is to feed my starter. I have to make a massive amount of starter tomorrow for my bulk dough day. How do I do that? A lot of people have a lot of confusion around how to prep enough starter, how to know you're going to have enough starter, and how to bulk it up so quickly. You really don't need to keep a lot of starter on hand. As long as you understand a little bit of basic math and you have a healthy starter and you understand ratios, you are able to bulk up your starter rather quickly to make a massive amount of starter for a bulk dough day. For example, I'll go from only keeping around 100 grams to feeding it once, getting maybe 200-300 grams, for example. And then I take that amount and I feed it a 1:10 ratio, and I could have 7,000 grams of starter in no time, all because I understand ratios and math. I'm going to give you a resource that you can look up. It's called calc.getdope.com, and it is a calculator for people who struggle with baker's math. I personally don't have an issue with it anymore, but I still use the Get Dope calculator every now and then to calculate the hydration of my loaf if I don't want to do the math, to make a levain if I know I need an exact amount and I know the ratio that I want to feed my starter. It just punches out the calculations so you know exactly what to feed your starter so you can have the correct amount of starter for your dough day. The first step in figuring out how much starter I need is to look through my hot plate and look through all of my pre-orders for my pickups on Friday and my market on Saturday, and make sure I write everything down so I'm not missing anything, and then also calculate how much extra I want to take to my pop-up on Saturday, how much more I want to bake for walk-up customers. That's always the trickiest part. And once I nail that down, I'm able to punch in how many batches I need of each item that I'm prepping tomorrow for my dough day into a calculator that I created. I have a sheet on Google that I created. It is very, very basic. I basically have every recipe that I'm making tomorrow on this sheet in gram amounts or tablespoons or teaspoons or whatever I'm using. And I have formulas built into the calculator to where all I have to do is punch in the number of batches I need of each of my recipes, and it multiplies the starter amount in each of those recipes by whatever batch amount I'm making. So for example, I have a classic loaf recipe in there. It's broken down in grams for each ingredient, and the starter amount is 75 grams. I punch in, I need to make 20 loaves of my classic loaf recipe, and it multiplies 75 by 20 and puts that in a cell. And it does that for every single item that requires starter. And the formula that I've plugged into there will then grab all of those gram amounts times the number of batches I'm making and put it into one cell for me. And so all I have to do is look at that one cell and see, oh, I need 7,000 grams for my dough day tomorrow. And then I just have to figure out what ratio I want to feed with. Oftentimes I'm feeding with a 1:10 ratio because it can bulk up my starter the fastest. I also can feed it rather early in the evening, and it peaks within 12 hours in my house. And it stays peaked for a long time because it has so much flour and water. If I were to do, say, a 1:5 ratio, which is 1 part starter, 5 parts flour, 5 parts water, in grams, it would probably peak within 8 hours. And then I'd be screwed because it would start to fall rather quickly. And so I'd have to use it all really early in the morning, which is impossible for me because I am prepping so many loaves. Typically I'm prepping around 40 to 55 loaves. Sometimes if we're prepping for a big market, I'm prepping 80 loaves. And then I have all these other things I have to make. Tomorrow I'm making donuts, I'm making English muffins, pizza dough, all these extra things. So I can't mix all of that at the same time in the morning before my starter starts falling and getting acidic. So that's why I opt into the 1 to 10 to 10 ratio, which is 1 part starter, 10 parts flour, 10 parts water. Like I said, it peaks within 12 hours, and then I can start using it at like 5 a.m., for example, and I will still be mixing things until 10. And during that whole time, during that whole period, my starter is not acidic. It is still very active and very much at peak activity. And so I don't have to worry about the acidity affecting fermentation. Right now, I have about 300 grams of starter just sitting on my counter in a tub that I fed yesterday with a 1 to 10 to 10 ratio. It is ready to be fed. It is getting a bit acidic and needs to be fed again. So I will feed it with a 1 to 10 to 10 ratio after I calculate how much starter I need for my bulk dough day tomorrow. And I'll show you that process. Whenever I factor in a pop-up market, it takes me forever to do the math because I never know how much to prep of each item. It is a guessing game, total shot in the dark of how many people are going to be coming to this thing. But I'm taking English muffins, I'm taking donuts, I'm taking pizza crusts that are par-baked, taking demi baguettes, I'm taking classic loaves, everything bagel, white cheddar, hot honey loaves, spelt loaves, some scones, some cookies, and granola as well. So we have a lot going on, and I just never know how much to prep. But I've decided with my pre-orders that I already have, I'm gonna be prepping around 33, 35 loaves tomorrow, and so much pizza dough and pizza crust. I had a lot of pre-orders of pizza. We are gonna be prepping my starter. It's a little bit later than expected. It's 7:30 now. And I'm gonna be prepping it with a 1 to 9 to 9 ratio. Hopefully that peaks a little less than 12 hours from now. And the way that I'm doing it is I need around 5,000 grams of starter tomorrow. And again, I prep extra just in case something happens. So I'm starting with 277 grams of starter, and I'm gonna feed it 2,500 grams of flour and 2,500 grams of water. And you can watch me do that now. This was my starter I fed yesterday with a 1 to 10 to 10 ratio. It already peaked today. I used some of it for my discard recipes, and it needs to be fed again. So I'm going to start, like I said, with 277 grams of starter. So I'm putting that in my bigger tub here. I'm gonna do 2,500 grams of water. I always mix my starter until it is frothy in the water, and then I add my flour. This is called a spurtle, and it's super handy when mixing a big amount of starter like this. I have this one linked on my TikTok shop. Okay, so that's done. Now I'm adding in my flour. I'm gonna add 2,500 grams. Sometimes I add a little bit of freshly milled flour in, but I'm not going to today. 2,500 grams. This is the hardest part. After it is fully mixed, I just go ahead and loosely cover it with the lid or a shower cap. Good morning. It is 6:45 a.m. and I am going to be starting my first round of loaves in my mixer. I can do about 22 at a time, so I'm going to max it out today. The whole process takes me 40 minutes, but it is a lifesaver because I'm not having to sit there and babysit my mixer, and it develops the gluten super well. So let's do that. First, how is this starter doing? Perfect. First things first, I always add in my water and my starter, and then I start incorporating flour slowly, and I hold back salt for 30 minutes, so I'm doing a fermentalise. Also hold back a little bit of the liquid, and that's what I use whenever I'm adding my salt in 30 minutes later. I pre-measured all my flour last night to make it really easy. I'm going to incorporate this first, and then I add in my second round of flour. Okay, once I start to see that the flour is getting incorporated, go ahead and start adding more. And the nice thing about this is it has a timer, so I'm going to set the timer to about 6 minutes on low. While that's working, I did an autolyse last night on my spelt loaves, so I'm going to start adding in my starter to this batch now. I've done the initial mix, and now I'm just going to let it sit for 30 minutes before I add in salt. Next up, I'm hand mixing my pizza dough. I could do it in my Bosch mixer, but there's so many that I'm making this week that I just prefer to knock it out hand mixing while I'm waiting for my dough and my Stella to do the fermentalise. And so we're going to knock that out really quick. I always mix this into like a frothy consistency, and then I go ahead and add in all of my other ingredients. And I mix that, and then I add in my flour and then my salt. I pre-weighed all my flour yesterday. It's been a little over 30 minutes, and I'm now ready to go ahead and add in my salt. And now the mixer gets turned on high for about 7 minutes. Getting the dough out of the dang mixer is literally the hardest part, in my opinion. Okay. We are about an hour and a half in to the process, and I'm about 3/4 of the way done with mixing. I still have to mix my English muffins and my donut dough, and I have my second batch of classic loaves just sitting in the Estella mixer doing a fermentalise, and I will add salt in another like 15 minutes or so, and that will be done rather quickly. So once I'm done with all the mixing, I'm gonna have to start doing stretch and folds, adding inclusions, and it gets a little bit chaotic. I'm mixing so many more loaves at a time, and even though I'm breaking them up into smaller batches, for example, I mixed 22 loaves in my Estella mixer, and I broke that up into 12 classics, 6 everything bagel white cheddar, and 4 garlic and herb. And because it was the same dough mixed at the same time, I have to add in inclusions, do stretch and folds to those batches all at the same time. They probably will ferment around the same time, and then I will have to shape them all at the same time. So when you're having to do 22 loaves really quick, put them in the fridge before they overproof, it's a little intense. But with smaller batches, for example, my next batch is only 7 loaves. I have staggered that now about 45 minutes from the first batch, or even an hour from the first batch, and so I will have a little bit of a break or have like a breather in between, and then I can start shaping again. But this part is always the craziest. The next thing I'm going to do is take my dough temperature. Hopefully my dough has cooled off. It was 83 degrees coming out of the mixer, which means it will ferment really quickly. But I'm going to take the dough temperature, take my alico samples, and then start stretch and folds. Cooled off by like 2 degrees. It's 81 degrees now, but that's still pretty intense. So I have my little 2-ounce cups. I take 40 grams because it's around 80 degrees, and I stick that in my cup. And once it has reached the lid, it supposedly has risen 30%. My bad, it's 43 grams. The beautiful thing about the Estella mixer is the gluten development is top notch. So although I still do 3 sets of stretch and folds, or 4, it's very developed. Okay, I'm gonna let it sit for 30 minutes and I will do another set. With any of my enriched doughs, I prefer to use Betty, my Bosch mixer. With English muffins especially, and donut dough, I am mixing a lot for a long period of time, and I don't like to do that by hand at all. It also doesn't really develop the gluten as well by hand, especially those stiffer doughs like English muffin dough. And then with donut dough, it is just so sticky, and you have to mix for a prolonged period to get it to a window pane. And so I always use my Bosch mixer. Okay, I'm doing my English muffin dough first, and I just put everything directly in the bowl and mix. I made 2 mistakes today. One, I forgot to add the hot honey into my hot honey dough until it was all incorporated and fully developed. And so then I put it back in the mixer, put the hot honey in, mixed it again, and it seems like it's gonna be okay because I caught it early enough. Second thing is that I was supposed to make donuts tomorrow during my bake day for my Friday pickups, because I'm not making donuts for tomorrow. I'm making them for Saturday. And so I was going to cold proof them overnight and get them out of the fridge, let them rise, and then fry them Saturday morning. So now I have 3 batches of donuts that will be ready tomorrow. And I'm going to try to figure out how to sell those. Okay, it's been a couple of hours and it's time to start folding in inclusions into my dough. This is my garlic and herb loaf. I just get my hands wet before I do a set of stretch and folds. It makes handling the dough a lot easier. Kind of dimple in my inclusions and fold. Especially with this inclusion, you just need to be careful to not tear the dough, because the minced garlic and herbs sometimes do that. Next up, I have everything bagel and white cheddar. I've shared this recipe in a short as well as on my Instagram. Okay. First thing ready to shape per usual is my pizza dough. Tends to ferment the fastest. And now I section this off into 375 gram balls, and I bought these 16-ounce containers that I'm hoping the dough fits in without exploding. If not, I do have a backup plan. I'm going to shape this, see what we're working with. Okay. It barely fits. Hopefully it doesn't explode out of the cup. That's my granola from yesterday, ready to get bagged. All my pizza doughs are ready. I take these out to the fridge to cold proof. They're definitely gonna explode. I have a feeling. But I will get bigger cups next time, 32 ounces. Next things next, I'm adding in my hot honey inclusions, which is cheddar cheese and jalapenos. Again, I shred half of my cheese in this, and I air fry my pickled jalapenos because I like pickled best, but they're very problematic and can create a really flat loaf if you don't take out the extra moisture or compensate in some other way. And it's just easiest for me to air fry them. It takes out a lot of the extra moisture and makes them easy to incorporate that way. I also noticed before I air fried jalapenos that it would tear the dough if they were just too wet. That's done. Next up, I have more stretch and folds. Doing one more stretch and fold on my garlic and herb loaf. And one more on my everything bagel loaf. And this dough is about ready to shape, honestly. I could probably let it go for a few more minutes, like 30 more minutes. Up next, I have spelt loaves. The first loaves that are ready today are my classic loaves. They fermented in 4 hours. Oh, they were 83 degrees. And everything happens faster when it's warmer. And then of course the other ones that are ready are the garlic and herb and the everything bagel that were mixed with this. But because one has a cold cheese inclusion, I'm letting it go longer. And then the garlic slows down fermentation, so I always let it go a little bit longer. And then those will be ready. I'm only making a few mini loaves today and the rest are gonna be full size. And so I portioned them out into 900 gram balls. About 9, 10. There we go. Some will become demi baguettes. Some are gonna be my Nutella swirl loaves. So now we head to the pre-shape, and I have to do a bench rest for 20 minutes, and then I come back to do the final shaping. In this stage, I'm going to add my Nutella in a few of them. Final shaping is definitely my favorite part of the entire process. And I've noticed with my dough coming out of the mixer, it is so much more strong than it was when I was either hand mixing or with the Bosch. And so I feel like I don't need to create as much tension in my loaves as I normally would. I've been doing a variety of different shaping methods, but the double caddy clasp method has worked well for me in the past. I feel like it's just a little too compact now. See how compact it is? What I like to do now is just a single clasp. Or I saw Parker do this, where he kind of does a modified clasp. And then I just stitch it after. And that tends to create enough tension in my loaf. Do that again, where it kind of does that. And then this goes in the Banneton, like so, and I'll stitch it. See the difference between these? This was like way too much tension with a double, and this is just perfect. So Nutella swirl, here goes nothing. I filled a piping bag with Nutella, which apparently helps with messy inclusions like these. We'll do another row. Okay, so my friend did that. Kind of like pinch those. And then I will put it inside of a lined banneton. I do let my dough rest for about 10 minutes in the banneton before I go ahead and just stitch it up. And that's mainly because I'm doing the single catty clasp method and it tends to pull apart. And I just like to create a little bit more surface tension. But this is definitely the shape I'm starting to prefer. And this was the one that I did the double catty clasp method on. And again, it's a little bit more tight. See what we got going. Oh. Now it's actually a race to the finish line because everything's ready to shape one after the other. So the next one is the everything bagel and then the garlic and herb. Garlic herb. These are all ready to go in the fridge and I will bake them tomorrow. My donut dough is already ready to go ahead and start shaping. I find that this is a very fragile and sticky dough compared to some other enriched doughs that I've worked with, but it makes the donuts extra light and fluffy. So I line a pan that I can cover with a lid with these squares, and that is where my donuts will go. I can put about 12 on a pan. So you just take one of these biscuit cutters. Mine is a little over 3 inches because I found that the other one that I was using was too small. I wanted my donuts a little bit bigger in size. Some people like have success with that, but I find I have to do it by hand. So these 12 are ready to cold proof, and then they'll do their second rise tomorrow and I'll fry them. Donuts are done. The only thing left now is my hot honey loaves, and I have English muffins that I have to shape individually. And that always takes forever. So here goes nothing. These are officially my last loaves that I have to put in the fridge, and then I'm almost done for the day. I just have to feed my starter because I'm making more donuts tomorrow. RIP to me. And I'm also shaping my English muffins a little bit later. I just stuck the dough in the fridge. I sometimes do that when I just am tired and want to break. It slows it down enough to where it doesn't like over ferment, and then they're actually easier to shape when the dough is cold. So I'm just gonna wait until later to actually shape them, and then I put them back in the fridge and I proof them at room temperature tomorrow before I put them on the griddle and bake them. And after today, this is where most of my loaves are cold proofing. And then I have my donuts in here. It's one of the fridges. Looks like some of mine are overproofing potentially. I'm all ready for my pop-up. My car is packed. The sun is shining. It is raining a little bit. I feel like I underprepared for this market in a weird way. Like I didn't prep enough product. I never know how I'm gonna feel the morning of a pop-up. Usually, I think I over-prepare, and I have been for several pop-ups in a row, and I haven't sold out. And I think it's just much better to sell out than it is to come home with a ton of product that you have to give away or try to sell after the pop-up. So I just made peace with the fact that I had 6 pre-orders, and I took 26 loaves. I have 9 cookie packs, 5 packs of maple glazed donuts. I have some baguettes, some pizza crust, and some scones. And that's all I'm taking today, which doesn't seem like a lot to me compared to what I've been prepping, but we'll see if I sell out. Just parked my car, T-minus 20 minutes until we start selling, so I gotta hurry up. So we're about halfway through the pop-up, and I'm almost sold out of my bread items. I sold out of donuts and cookies. Of course, sweet things are like the first to go, almost always, but I'll show you what I have left. We have 1 hour left of the market, and I just have a mini classic, a Nutella swirl, granola, 1 scone, and pizza crust. Everything else has sold really well. So we are officially breaking down for the market. I'm leaving with 2 pizza crusts, 1 Nutella loaf, 1 granola, and 1 scone. So I call that a successful day. The best feeling is going to the market with 2-3 bins and only coming back with 1 that's stacked and almost no product. It was a successful day. Super happy with the results.